abortion or subsidiary economic issues such as the minimum wage or the deficit. But there are times when, in the face of dramatic changes in the society and economy or in America's place in the world, voters have suddenly become responsive to politicians or movements that raise issues that major parties have either downplayed or ignored. There are two kinds of such events. The first are what political scientists call realigning elections. In these, a party or a presidential candidate's challenge to the prevailing worldview causes an upheaval that reorders the existing coalitions and leads to a new majority party. Franklin Roosevelt's campaigns in 1932, and even more so, 1936 did this, and so did Ronald Reagan's campaign in 1980. Such elections are rare. They're usually precipitated by economic depression or war, and by a succession of political outbursts that challenge but do not replace the prevailing worldview. In American politics, these outbursts often take the form of populist candidacies and movements. These catalytic populists have defined politics in us versus them terms, as struggles of the people against the establishment based on issues and demands that the latter had been sidestepping. The rise of the People's Party was the first major salvo against the worldview of laissez-faire capitalism. Huey Long's Share Our Wealth coincided with Franklin Roosevelt's election in 1932 and helped drive the Roosevelt administration to develop a new politics to sustain its majority. Together, these movements established the populist framework that Bernie Sanders, who described himself both as a democratic socialist and as a progressive, would adopt during his 2016 campaign. As liberal critics would point out during the 1950s, the People's Party had within it strains of anti-Semitism, racism, and nativism, particularly toward the Chinese. But these were at best secondary elements. Until the movement began to disintegrate, the original People's Party was primarily a movement of the left. The first major instances of right-wing populism would come in the 1930s, with Father Charles Coughlin, and then in the 1960s with George Wallace's presidential campaigns. Wallace helped doom the New Deal majority and helped lay the basis for the Reagan realignment of 1980. He created a constituency and a right-wing variety of populism, what sociologist Donald Warren called Middle American radicalism, that would migrate into the Republican Party and become the basis of Donald Trump's challenge to Republican orthodoxy in 2016. The People's Party. In May 1891, the legend goes, some members of the Kansas Farmers Alliance, riding back home from a national convention in Cincinnati, came up with the term populist to describe the political views that they and other alliance groups in the West and South were developing. The next year, the alliance groups joined hands with the Knights of Labor to form the People's Party that over the next 2 years challenged the most basic assumptions that guided Republicans and Democrats in Washington. The party would be short-lived, but its example would establish the basis for populism in the United States and Europe. At the time the populists were meeting in Cincinnati, the leading Republicans and Democrats in the United States were reveling in the progress of American industry and finance. They believed in the self-regulating market as an instrument of prosperity and individual opportunity, and thought government's role should be minimal. Grover Cleveland, who was president from 1884 to 1888, and from 1892 to 1896, railed against government paternalism. Public sector intervention, he declared in his second inaugural address, stifles the spirit of true Americanism. Its functions, he stated, do not include the support of the people. Government's principal role was to maintain a sound and stable currency through upholding the gold standard. Cleveland and his rivals quarreled over the tariff and whether the Democrats were the party of rum, Romanism, and rebellion, but they agreed on the fundamental relationship between government and the economy. But during these years, farmers in the South and the Plains suffered from a sharp drop in agricultural prices. Farm prices fell 2/3 in the Midwest and South from 1870 to 1890. The Plains, which prospered in the early 1880s, were hit by a ruinous drought in the late 1880s. But unsympathetic railroads, which enjoyed monopoly status, raised the cost of transporting farm produce. Many farmers in the South and the Plains states could barely break even. The small family farm gave way to the large bonanza farm, often owned by companies based in the East. Salaries were threatened by low-wage immigrants from China, Japan, Portugal, and Italy. Farmers who retained their land were burdened by debt. In Kansas.
Para seguir escuchando este audiolibro gratuitamente, haz clic en el enlace de la descripción y podrás escucharlo completo sin coste gracias a la prueba de 30 días de Audible.